Adi, have you ever heard of a chocolate company nearly going bankrupt because they refused to add potato flour to their cocoa?
Oh, you have no idea. Let me take you back to Birmingham, 1866. Picture this: George Cadbury, yes, that Cadbury, is about to risk every last penny he has, all for one wild gamble, trying to make the purest cocoa in England. But here's the twist: the only way to do it is to get his hands on a secret Dutch machine, and he doesn't even speak the language.
Wait, he just went to Holland without knowing Dutch? How did he even pull that off?
Exactly. George was so desperate, he hopped on a boat to Holland, dictionary in hand, hoping to convince Coenraad van Houten, the guy who basically invented modern cocoa, to sell him this mysterious machine. The Dutch had figured out how to squeeze out most of the fat from cocoa beans, making a drink that was smooth, pure, and way tastier than anything in England.
So, what was so special about this machine?
The Van Houtens had perfected a hydraulic press that could reduce the cocoa fat to less than 30%. Before that, cocoa in England was so fatty and gritty, people had to mix in flour or potato starch just to make it drinkable. The Dutch process changed everything. Suddenly, you could have pure cocoa that actually tasted like chocolate.
That sounds like a game changer. But did George actually get the machine?
He did. After a lot of awkward sign language and flipping through his dictionary, George somehow convinced Van Houten to sell him the press. He shipped this 10-foot tall cast iron beast back to Birmingham. It cost him almost all his money, about £1,000, which was a fortune back then.
That's a huge risk. Was his family on board with this?
Well, it was a rough time. Right after he bought the machine, two of George's brothers died, one in England, one in Australia. Suddenly, the whole family business was riding on George and his brother Richard. They had to make this work, or Cadbury might have disappeared forever.
So, did the new cocoa take off right away?
Not at all. Their new product, cocoa essence, was pure, no fillers, no starch, just cocoa. But that also made it way more expensive than the competition. Most companies were still adding cheap stuff to stretch their cocoa, so shopkeepers didn't want to stock Cadbury's, and customers didn't want to pay extra.
That's wild. So, what did they do? Just hope people would come around?
Actually, they did something super controversial. At least for Quakers at the time, they started advertising. See, most Quaker businesses, like Rowntree's and Fry's, thought advertising was kind of sleazy. They believed if your product was good, you didn't need to brag about it. But George and Richard were desperate.
That's so funny, because now advertising is everywhere. But back then, it was almost like cheating.
Exactly. To some, it was almost unprincipled. But the Cadburys decided to go for it anyway. They made fancy packaging, ran ads, and tried to convince shopkeepers and customers that pure cocoa was worth the price. It was a huge gamble, and honestly, it looked like it might fail.
Wait, isn't this kind of like the debates we have now about clean or organic food? People say they want purity, but then balk at the price.
Spot on. It's the same struggle. Do you stick to your principles and risk going under, or do you compromise to survive? And even today, companies wrestle with whether to spend big on marketing or let their products speak for themselves.
So, did the advertising actually work for Cadbury?
It took time, but yes, slowly, people started to notice the difference. Shopkeepers saw that customers were asking for Cadbury's by name. And once people tasted pure cocoa, they realized it was way better than the starchy stuff. The gamble paid off, and Cadbury set the standard for quality chocolate in Britain.
That's amazing. But it's wild to think how much of that came down to just taking a risk and being willing to break with tradition.
Absolutely. And it's a pattern you see today too. Think about all the companies now that have to decide, do we stick to our values or do we bend to what sells? Do we invest in advertising or hope people notice us on their own?
And even now, there's still this tension between quality and marketing. Like, is it better to have the best product or the best ad campaign?
Exactly. The Cadbury story shows that sometimes you need both. You can have the purest cocoa in the world, but if nobody knows about it, it won't matter. And that's still true for businesses today.
So, if George Cadbury hadn't taken that risk, buying the Dutch machine, breaking the Quaker rules on advertising, there might not even be Cadbury chocolate now.
That's right. It was a huge gamble, but it changed the chocolate industry forever. And it's a reminder that sometimes challenging tradition is the only way forward.
I guess that's why we still see companies struggling with these same questions: how much to risk, when to stick to your values, and when to try something new.
Exactly. History doesn't repeat, but it sure rhymes. The Cadbury gamble is a lesson for anyone trying to make something better and get the world to notice.
I'll never look at a cup of cocoa the same way again. It's not just a drink, it's a story about risk, innovation, and standing out.
And that's why these stories matter. The choices people made back then still shape the way we do business and even what we eat today.
That's it for today's episode on Fun Learn Talks, where stories from business, technology, and history keep your curiosity alive. If you enjoyed the journey, make sure to follow, rate, or share it with a fellow curious mind. And hey, we'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment or connect with us online. I'm Anu, and I'll catch you next time, right here on Fun Learn Talks. Until then, keep learning, keep wondering.